This show, and I think this station probably illustrates this almost every day. We have to have an ongoing dialogue about what fights we really want to fight, who we want to commit to, and if in fact we decide to do so, we better have clear leadership. You know, George W. Bush, a lot of people worldwide questioned his long-term strategy, especially regarding Iraq, not so much Afghanistan, but not his commitment. Yesterday on the floor of the House, Congressman Adam Kinzinger, our Republican friend, spoke about the, quote, decline of American leadership around the globe and the fact that the perception that America is on the retreat from the rest of the world during a very, very dangerous time. We welcome him back to AM 560 The Answer to clarify those remarks and add to them. Congressman, good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, good morning. It's good to be with you. It sounds like it's much colder there than D.C.
It is a little colder and a lot snowier. We're sending some of it your way.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm going to try to skip over it on the way home in a day.
Our enemies no longer fear us. Our allies no longer trust us. Would you elaborate, sir?
Yeah, you know, I got back from Munich, which is a big security conference. It's NATO allies, it's partners, stuff like that. And I mean, it makes me sick to my stomach. We met with defense ministers, heads of state, especially, you know, heads of state and defense ministers in areas of the Middle East, very important areas. And they all had the same thing, which is we no longer trust the United States. I mean, with your Syrian policy, with the situation in Iraq, with Iran. I mean, look, let's take this, for example, the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates came to us and said, we want to sign what's called a nuclear 1-2-3 agreement, which basically gives them the right to have a civilian nuclear program. We said, okay, you can do this, but you have to commit to not ever enriching uranium, not reprocessing spent nuclear fuel, and this whole host of things, and then we will allow you to have a nuclear program just for power. Now, keep in mind, this is our ally. They signed it. We called it the gold standard of nuclear programs. South Korea is begging us for the right to enrich uranium because they want to get into the nuclear industry, the nuclear power industry. It's good for their economy. We've said no, despite the fact they're neighbors to the north, and then we just implicitly gave Iran the right to enrich uranium. I mean, so what does that say to our allies? It says to our allies, hey, you know what? If you're close to us, you're not going to get to do anything. But if you violate international law, if you continue to go around sanctions, we're eventually going to reward you with letting you do whatever you want. And I've got to tell you, that is just one of the many things that our friends are screaming at us is very scary, and they're saying, where has America gone?
Congressman, go back and elaborate on that deal, the gold standard of nuke agreements you were talking about. Can we verify that for, say, 10, 15, 20 years with South Korea, with other states that we allow to produce that sort of technology?
Yeah, we can, so we have something called, they're 1-2-3 agreements, and what it means is a country wants to get into using, having civilian nuclear power, and they can sign an agreement with us, which allows them to, verifiable with us, to have their civilian nuclear program, and in many cases we say, we don't, like in the case of the United Arab Emirates, we don't want you to enrich your own uranium because, look, you're in the Middle East, it's a dangerous area to do it, but here's what we'll do. We'll ensure that you get your enriched uranium for your nuclear power plants, and we'll ensure that you have a way to get rid of your spent fuel. The United Arab Emirates said, fine, even though it would be a huge economic advantage for them to create their own, to enrich their own uranium, they said, we're happy not to because we understand what's going on. So we called that the gold standard of deals. We've done the same thing to South Korea. South Korea, we're not giving the right to enrich uranium to because...
But why not?
Because we say we're committed to a nuclear-free Korean peninsula, despite the fact that North Korea has nukes and does it.
A little too late for that.
But exactly. And so this is the kind of double standard. And then all of a sudden, Iran, implicitly in this interim deal, and look, we talked with Secretary Kerry when I was at... There's going to be enrichment of uranium in the final deal. This is a complete capitulation of this administration. I'll just say this is an 80s television show when the hero punches the guy, knocks him to the ground, turns around, and you're yelling at the screen, shoot him or hit him one more time because he's going to pull that pistol out and shoot you in the back, and that's exactly what's happening.
God, wouldn't you understand, though, with South Korea, if the leaders there decided to become, we're done being an ally, we need to protect ourselves, we'll be your enemy, and create a nuclear power?
Well, that's exactly right, and I mean that's what we risk. We risk alienating our friends. I talked with an ambassador just yesterday of a very important Middle Eastern country who said, look, at this point, we're not going to the Russians, we're not going to go to the Chinese, but when the United States abandons us, we have to look around and say, okay, are they really our friend? And if they're not, where do we turn? Because we're a small country and we need the protection. So, look, I know there's a lot of people that say we're tired of a decade of war, we want to withdraw from the world. As much as we can want to withdraw from the world won't withdraw from our daily existence anymore. It's not 1920. And the most dangerous spot that the world can be in is if America is not dictating, not that we have to be the global leader or the global police officer, but you know what? By us being powerful and out there, we can dictate the regulations, the way that the world operates, other than, it's not Russia, it's not terrorism, and it's not China.
What's the old saying? Power isn't power unless you use it. Adam Kinzinger is here, the Republican congressman from the Fighting 16th. As an Iraq war veteran, let's talk a bit about Fallujah, how that has fallen back into the enemy's hands. At this point, can you still influence events in both Iraq and Afghanistan and just the Middle East in general from afar, or do you think we have to have a commitment of troops in both of those countries for the foreseeable future?
Well, I don't think we can reintroduce troops to Iraq. Because then it becomes Iraq 3, right, the third war. I've called for limited air power in Iraq with the Iraqi government. We actually, interoperatively work pretty well with the Iraqi government. We equipped them and trained them. Continuing a training program, even if it's in a neutral site like Jordan. In Afghanistan, look, we have a very important decision to make. We need to leave troops there past 2014 to serve in a counterterrorism capacity, not a nation building, but killing terrorists where they find them. And all this really stems from the lack of a Syria policy by this president. Bashar al-Assad, it just came out, tortured to death, 11,000 opponents of him. This makes Srebrenica, which is why we got involved in Bosnia, look like child's play. 11,000 tortured to death. He is attacking only the Free Syrian Army opposition and not his al-Qaeda opposition because he wants al-Qaeda to get bigger so that he can say to the West, he's the reason, he's the sole protector of Christian minorities, he's the sole protector of the Middle East. Look, it is so bad in Syria, there's no real good options left. But about 3 years ago, there were some pretty good options that we failed to take. And one more quick thing. The Marines fought their hardest battles probably since Khe Sanh in Vietnam to take Fallujah, and it's gone. And it's gone because this administration was eager to have a campaign promise met and did not leave a residual force, a counterterrorism force in Iraq that could have seen these groups coming across the western Iraqi desert and taken them out, and we probably wouldn't even know about it.
Congressman, before we let you get on with your busy day, I wanted to ask you about security at Sochi Olympics. Are you confident that there's not going to be any attacks?
No, I'm not confident of that. Sochi's a big area. There probably won't be anything within the quote-unquote ring of steel, but, look, they knew it was going to be there for a while. They could have put terrorists in there before the ring of steel came up. That said, if I had an opportunity, I'd very comfortably go to Sochi myself. Even if there is an incident, I think, for the most part, it's going to be pretty safe. But, I could be proven wrong.
Congressman, we'll leave it there for this morning, but thanks a lot for your time and your efforts to keep fighting the good fight.
Hey, I love being on your show. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Congressman. Adam Kinzinger on our Turnkey.Pro answer line.